Today I'm going to be transforming the Dream Team SMP. So don't forget to subscribe, and without any further ado, let's begin. To start off with, the spawn of the Dream Team SMP is just a random box with some really weird materials. So I started out by neating out this box and using spruce planks and cobblestone to create a much nicer area. I also added a cherry blossom in the centre of spawn. The next thing I had to do was to add a path leading from the spawn of the SMP to the main part of the SMP where everyone lives. I also added a pond as decoration near this path. Now that we've got the path, we now need to transform the first base, which would be GeorgeNotFound's base. There's not a lot to do other than to add more detail to the bridge, which we can do by adding campfires, trapdoors and slabs. Then I need to add some plants to his base, which I added some seagrass inside his pond, some sugarcane around the pond, bamboo around the area, as well as adding a few barrels in his base. Also, he has a fence going around his entire base, so I neatened it up by adding a few lanterns and swapping out some of the fences for fence gates. Next, I needed to add a path from GeorgeNotFound's base to the main portal, so I continued the same path design as I had earlier to the portal. However, near the portal there were a lot of trees, so I had to remove them, but in replacement of those trees I added a pond as well as some more custom trees. Next we have the community portal. It's very small, so the first thing I did was make it much larger. Then I decorated the bottom parts of it using Blackstone, and then I decorated the top part with basalt and polished basalt. Then I added a boundary around the portal area using Blackstone and Blackstone slabs, as well as a few Blackstone walls with soul lanterns on top of them. Next I had to build a bridge connecting the portal to the community house. I did this in the same way I built GeorgeNotFound's bridge over his pond. Next I had to restore the community house. To do that I just drained all the water and rebuilt the walls. As it is quite a nice looking build, it just needed restoration. So now that we have the community house, we then need to build out all the other bridges from the community house. Just like the first bridge I used campfires, spruce trapdoors and spruce slabs. But this time using mushroom stems and spruce trapdoors around the outsides. The next thing I did was rebuilding the community pet house. I also improved the gravestone of Spirit, Dream's horse. Then after that I added the same bridge design by the carrot farm. And finally I continued the bridge out to Ponk's house. After that I neatened up the sugarcane and added a bit more bamboo with different height variations around the side of the lake. Now we've got Sapnap's house. At the moment it's just remains, so the first thing I did was adding back the framing using oak logs, and then adding a roof using oak trapdoors. Then on the first floor of Sapnap's house I used stripped acacia logs and acacia planks. Then I used acacia trapdoors over the top so that you can look down into the ground floor. Then on the ground floor I removed the slabs by the glass, and then all the blocks underneath the glass I placed with spruce wood. This way it has a much nicer outlook on the lake. Now I'm going to transform this tower that's near Sapnap's base. It's a bit awkward, the shape, so I decided to remove it and then build up a completely new tower, but this time using spruce logs and spruce planks. Next to that tower we have a stage, which I didn't really like too much as it had a bit of a mixture of blocks, so I destroyed it and rebuilt it much neater. Then after creating the stage, I then continued the path up to Church Prime. Then I destroyed the Church Prime and rebuilt it, but this time a bit smaller, but with more detail. After the rebuilding of Church Prime, I then neatened up the Hall of Fame. I used some smooth quartz stairs to detail it. Then I continued the path from the Hall of Fame to Purple's UFO. However, just outside Purple's UFO is this brick house, so I detailed it much more than it currently is, as well as adding a much better roof. Then just opposite that brick house there were some campfires, so I decided to add more campfires to create a food storage system. And just after that food storage system I added another campfire that looks like it's cooking food. Then I added a massive wheat field all around that area. Next we have Tommyinnit's tower, which doesn't look too good with just a mixture of glass and smooth stone, so I completely removed it. However, I did replace the tower with another wooden tower that looks much better, with only the third of the height. However, because this tower was so tall and I want this one to be too, I built up beacon beams and then decorated them using lime glass and blue glass. And then in the centre of my tower I added a bubble column going all the way up to build height as another viewing platform. Then I neatened up the terrain just outside the Tommyinnit Tower and Sapnap's house. And then I also added detail to that area by adding custom trees, ponds, and flowers. Next, we have this black meeting hall just outside that tower, so I decorated it on the interior. To begin with, I dug 8 blocks down to add the fog effect, and then I added a new table, as well as adding some wither roses in the background. Now we're going to be moving slightly to the right over to Ponk's base. To start off with, I remade his pathway leading from the community house to his base by swapping out the crimson slabs for crimson hyphae and crimson nylium. I also added some crimson fence and fence gates along the side of this bridge just to make it seem like it had actual railings. Then on the inside of Ponk's base, I swapped out all the grass for warp nylium. Then I rebuilt the pen using much more detail. Then I rebuilt the house, but this time in a Blackstone theme to match the area. Before I build Ponk's tower, I need to add more life to Ponk's base, so to do that I used bone meal as well as growing a few warped trees. Now I can build Ponk's tower. To do that, I first need to destroy the original tower. Then I built up a new tower using warped hyphae and crimson hyphae in a twisting design. This is because I am making the crimson hyphae into a snake-like dragon. And this dragon is just so terrifying. And for the interior of Ponk's tower, I decorated it just as it was before, with a water column going all the way up. However, this time I added more detail by adding streamlights on the side with trapdoors along them. And finally, along the walls of Ponk's base, I detailed them using Blackstone walls and Blackstone slabs. The next build I have to transform is Punz's base. To begin with, I continued the path out to Punz's base, as well as adding more paths leading up to the top of Punz's house. I then detailed Punz's house so that it's not just a flat wall, and gave it more depth. Then I detailed Punz's garden by neatening up his pumpkin patch, his pond, and then his lookout platform as well. Now moving on to Punz's tower, the first thing I needed to do there was to just remove all the snow and replace it with the appropriate block. Now I just needed to neaten up the Blackstone paths and the Blackstone fountain to make it a proper circle. Then I destroyed Punz's tower. Then I rebuilt Punz's tower using dead coral and polished basalt, as well as using orange glass for windows. Then I made part of a roof using Blackstone and shroom lights, and then built another layer. Then for the second and final layer, I did the exact same roof, but this time I filled it all in with Blackstone. Then the final thing I did to Punz's base was to add some beacon beams on the side. This was to make Punz's tower have much more depth. I also detailed the beams just as I did on the Tommyinnit tower, but this time using orange and blue glass. Then to decorate the garden just outside Punz's tower, I used hay bales, barrels, as well as lots of bone meal, flowers. So now that we've finished Punz's base, it's time to move on across the server. The next thing I have to do is to improve this shop. So to do that, I just added more depth as well as adding larger windows. Then just past this shop is another wooden house, so just like before, I transformed it to look much better. Then just to the right of this wooden house is a target. However, there's a lot of torches on top of it, so I decided to remove all the torches, add some glowstone, and then cover the entire thing using carpet. Next, I'm going to be transforming the skyrail. However, to get up there you have to go through this cobblestone water column. However, this doesn't look too good, so I'm going to destroy it and rebuild it using the same beam effect as I've done on the beacons. Next, I swapped out all the cobblestone for smooth quartz. Then in the centre of this smooth quartz platform, I placed some rails, but every 7 blocks I placed a powered rail with 2 redstone torches on the side. I continued this throughout the entire skyrail system. Next, we needed a reason for the skyrail to be floating, so I created these beams under every powered rail, just like this, using blue, light blue and white glass. Then on the other side to the beam that we created earlier, I created a puddle for you to land in when you jump off the skyrail. And then finally on the skyrail, I built up the skybase. And I made sure to stick with the original block palette of quartz and blue glass. Also, underneath this skybase, I built 2 more boosters that are much larger to boost up the skybase. Next, back on the ground, I built up the path to Tommyinnit and Ninja's base. Then I transformed Tommyinnit's base. I wanted to try and keep some smooth stone, but I did swap out most of the smooth stone for either basalt or soul soil. Then on the exterior of Tommyinnit's base, I added some more grass and more plants so that he has a better view from his base. Then I neatened up Ninja's Minecraft house, and finally I added more detail to the landscape around Ninja and Tommyinnit's house. I also swapped out this obsidian box for a neater jail cell. Also, the Blackstone tower just opposite this new jail cell, I neatened up as well by making it have more depth and adding more details to it. After doing that, I needed to continue the bridge, so I continued the bridge towards L'Manberg. But just before I get there, we have another base to transform, and that would be Karl's base. I just need to add more depth to it for it to look much better, as well as a few more windows. And there are 2 more things I have to do before heading into the L'Manberg area. The first one being neatening up the Trident launching areas throughout the server, and the second thing is to neaten up this area just underneath the bench. Now we can head inside of Manberg. The first thing I did was continue to add more paths throughout the area. Then I neatened up various structures and terrain throughout the area. Then I had to remove all the obsidian above the Manberg. And because this entire area is completely blown up in the real Dream SMP, I decided, rather than to transform it all completely, I'd add some withers throughout the Manberg, as it was destroyed via withers. Now I just need to add the final paths in the Dream Team SMP. And now that I've finished all the paths in the Dream SMP, I just need to finish off all the houses. But there's not just a house, we also have a glass fish tank as well. And the second to last thing I'm going to transform is Eret's museum. And now the last thing to transform is Tommyinnit's holiday home. The rail leading into the holiday home is quite long and made out of cobblestone and makes a lot of turns. So I got rid of all the cobblestone and replaced it with spruce trapdoors. However, I used detector rails, then powered rails, then detector rails. This was so I didn't need to have any redstone torches on the railway. And with that, we have finally finished the transformation of the Dream Team SMP. Here's a quick tour of the transformed Dream Team SMP. So that's how I transform the Dream Team SMP. Don't forget to like that smash button as well as subscribing to get updated as soon as I upload a video, clicking the video on the left or the one on the right. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye!